get neighbors like that. Looks like Dad's put her to work. It's a regular farm festival around here. I just felt like making a one of the reasons I'm doing this one, I felt like making a vlog called The End Part 2. The End Part 2. That has the ring of I don't know, one of those stupid Hollywood deals, you know, like Forrest Gump Part 2, Jenny's Zombie Jenny and the Great White Shark. Forrest Gump Part 2. I always got to repeat something that's funny. Zombie Jenny and the Great White Shark. I would watch that. Oh man. Oh Lord. It's obviously, you gotta entertain yourself around these parts, you know. What was the last one? The last vlog I made, a couple people, I am really not clear right now. I like to sometimes make vlogs when I'm not fully cognizant, so that I get out of my own way. But the last on Facebook and also in I was gonna say also in real life on Facebook and YouTube, a couple people contacted me. I felt like I should clarify with by the way, all my vlogs are for what it's worth. And I'm just saying. That's become one of my favorite sayings is, I'm just saying. There was a thing on YouTube a couple of years ago. I already, knew that it's a lot of work to play all the instruments and make all your own music and tracks. So I thought, well, I found a karaoke track of a Portishead song that's hard to find. You don't find it much. I don't even remember which one now. I think I'd made the backing track on my own. But anyway, some girl had posted. Those are really hard to do. They're really fragile vocals and one wrong note, and it's just horrible. And she had posted a hard-to-find karaoke track with her awful, stinking bad vocal on it. And somebody had posted below it. It said, "Way to fuck up a perfectly good karaoke track, bitch." Way to fuck up. This is posted, it's not me just cursing. In excess of anything or superfluously. I'll get around to some point in a minute. I'm gonna have to edit the hell out of this. But way to fuck up a perfectly good karaoke track, bitch. And then after that it said, and then he said, "I'm just saying." That frees you up, I'm just saying, sort of frees you up to make all these kind of statements where you're not really sticking to it. You're just observing that this could be the case, So, for what it's worth, I'm just saying. Forrest Gump. I wanted to make one called The End Part 2, and I thought that was clever. Or ridiculous. But, it's the kind of deal. Like I said, Forrest Gump Part 2, Jenny's Zombie Corpse and the Great White Shark. So, anyway, as far as I'll just give you my take on stuff and how it works. I mean, if anything, and I've said this before, the concept of God, I think it's a good concept, and nobody can say for sure either way, plus or minus, that exists or not. I'm not religious, by the way, but the three basic needs of the human animal. I like to know why things work and how they work. The three basic needs, according to everybody who studies psychiatry and philosophy and psychology and so on, the human animal has three basic needs: food, sex, and mysticism. Food could be extended out. That's food, sex, and mysticism are the three basal needs of the animal. And then the components of your health are your mental health, your physical health, and your social health. All of those are driven by very strong genetic and evolutionary pressure. And when you're a science type in school, guys used to say, driven by evolutionary pressure, and I would be like, I didn't really get how powerful and significant that is in the first half of my life, and now I totally understand it. Evolution is a study of time and pressure. It reminds me of the Shawshank Redemption. Time and pressure. But it's the Shawshank Redemption Part 2. Two guys, a chimp, and a boat. Some things shouldn't be done, this vlog, Exhibit A. Man, it's windy out here. But I'm gonna have to edit this like crazy, which I hate. I enjoy it. So, evolutionary pressures, and a lot of the things that we do, most stuff is common sense. Like I said, if nature is anything, it works. It's common sense. If God is anything, he works. It's common sense. By us assigning all of these mystical, magical, mythical values to everything, sort of screws us over. And I've seen a lot of examples of that. Personally, I know a lot of people who are famous and engineers, producers, rock stars, movie stars, people who are just legend and myth now, who are complete, for lack of a better phrase, douchebags who do not deserve a single comment, much less to be a myth. But we like to sort of assign these human beings like to assign these sort of mystical, one of the three basic needs, mysticism to mythic levels, to things inappropriately, I might add, and it screws us over in the pursuit for real knowledge. So, brass tacks. I'll get down to brass tacks a little bit. So, there are two really significant figures and I'm just saying, I love that. But in recent history, and really, men used to own women, and sort of not too long before this time, in the 1900s, the time of Freud and Jung, the two most significant figures. And I mentioned in the last vlog, and a couple people commented on it, and I'll give you my definitions of sort of how things work, and that is, first of all, everything's common sense, and people assign all of these completely, and I've said it, I'll be redundant in this one, as if I'm not. I'm always redundant, you know. I'm old, I'm forgetful. My brain is messed up. I had a brain injury and such. Um, and I'm in a lot of pain that constantly redirects my focus to things. To, you know. But, so, Carl Jung, and Sigmund Freud are the two most significant, sort of, in everything else in psychology and psychiatry is derivative of something they've already said. There's other people too, but everything that goes on, somebody sort of said, well, you know, history got over, several people actually said, well, yeah, that's invalid what this guy said. Freud, first of all, they both did, when I'm sort of listening to stuff or studying stuff, I mean, both of them did stuff that made incredible sense at one point, you know, and they're lumped together too. Jung really got pissed off about that. Carl Jung, he was like, I had my own ideas before, you know, Freud, how dare you guys lump me? He was really pissy about it, and he was a student of Freud, and I'm now, you know, I'm nearly the age of Freud when he met Jung, you know, so when you're younger, you assign all these mythical values, you know, people are older, it seems, all the evidence, this is not true. It seems like they know what they're talking about. So there are two figures here, and that would be a great name for a band, Pink Floyd. Boy, I'm hot today. But Pink Floyd. I should edit that out and keep it. You know, Freud said there were three parts of the of who you are, of what makes up a person. The id, which is the animal, instinctive, genetic part of self. And I think he didn't really understand, I don't think, the genetic component at that time, the way I understand it. So you have the id, the animal self. You gotta eat, you want to mate, and you have this need for God, for mysticism. All of those are genetic impulses that are really strong. Don't underplay how strong these things are. I mean, look at those. We're human beings. We're a developed animal. The most developed animal, supposedly, you know, on this planet. Probably. But look at those penguins. I'll probably edit some penguin footage into this. I like those little guys. Happy feet. Look at those penguins in Antarctica. March of the penguins. Those guys somehow know how to, that they need to cross 600 miles in a treacherous, almost impossible journey. They're penguins, you know, hobbling along to leave an egg and mate, and then go back and bring food back and forth, and then they finally all go back to the sea, and they do it every year. How do they know that? And the thing, and this is, they obviously probably have all kinds of, if they had higher thinking, they probably have all kinds of stuff in their little penguin heads, you know, penguin archetypes associated with this thing. But just think of that, the penguins. Let's put that. I'll put that out there. The damn penguins. That they know. Nobody's told them it's in their genetic code to make this huge journey every single year. It's the biggest part of their lives, you know. But to think that people are any different is ridiculous. And even what I'm saying right now, I am genetically predisposed to do, to say. There's really nothing new under the sun. So, and this is just my take on stuff. You can shut it off at any time. Not going to hold you accountable. So, those, you know, the penguins do that. To think that we do anything different, to think that what I'm saying right now isn't a product of evolutionary pressure. I couldn't overstate how powerful that is, evolutionary pressure, and how ridiculous it is. We now know that every single living being on this planet has a shared every animal, every person has a shared component of DNA that comes from the first single-cell animals. That's a fact. So it's obvious that we evolved from a single-celled organism. And like Darwin, I have ideas. I'm sure I know and can claim I know how that organism got started. But I'm not like Darwin. He said his book was called The Evolution of Species, not the origin, or the origin of species, I'm sorry, of species, but not the origin of life, you know. He was smart to avoid all this sort of interference with other people's evolutionary need to assign mysticism to things, i.e. religious people do not dig it when you tell them, look, you know, I understand what you're saying, but you're wrong. You know, nobody wants to have their ego shattered. So, the three components of the self. You have the animal instincts and urges that dominate most of your life. Anybody who says they don't doesn't understand it or is in denial. The second part is your ego. Now, I define these as per common sense and logic and years of study and an advanced degree of the subject. Although I'm predominantly a computer scientist, all these, if you'll notice, I noticed with Carl Jung, and all the great, really, philosophers and psychological and, you know, psychiatry, psychologists, they also had an understanding of physics and believed that the base nature of physics, the nature of the universe, tied into the nature of the way that we are. And it's very insightful, very true. Most stuff is really common sense and insightful, though not everything. And when you get into quantum physics, it is insightful, but it's not intuitive. It's not as intuitive, simply said. But it is. It makes perfect sense when you get into it. But, so you have your animal self, you have your ego, which is basically who you think you are, right? And what you think you know. And that we're a social animal also. So that social standing is important. It's important to us, you know. And all kinds of stuff goes haywire with that. So think about those penguins. You know, now you have people. So all of these things are instincts to us, you know, and some of them can be controlled. I mean, so you have the animal self. You have the ego, which is who you think you are, what you know. It's you. It's a personal identity. However, there's a conflict between everything coming from evolution and genetics, your understanding of life being limited to evolution and genetics, right? So, our egos want to tell us that my ego wants to tell me I'm, you know, so very clever and so very unique in the scheme of things. Well, probably not. And that's okay. I'm good with that now. In younger life, it used to be, you know, terminally unique, they say. But, I was thinking my camera was malfunctioning. So, and this guy is starting to, like, put a parts yard in his yard. However, and anyway, and so on, and therefore, with the self and who you are and your ego, it will tell you that you are just so very unique. Well, probably not. You know, people need to realize that. There's nothing new under the sun. I think that's even biblical. I'm sure that's a biblical thing. Not that that makes any sense, but the Bible seems to be, and the Quran and all these epic writings that have been the cause of millions of deaths, by the way, seem to be where people put a lot of stock and a lot of shared knowledge. So, So your ego is who you are, how you've organized all of it's how you've organized all of these genetic memories, these impulses, these animal urges, how you've made sense of the world yourself. Then we have the superego, and this makes sense to me, and I've felt all of these things at one time or another in my life. Now the superego is that part of you. It's really the reason why I think people do music, why they chant, why they do religion. It puts you in touch with all that you could be, the God within, the greatness, that concept of, again, mysticism. It ties it in with this need to understand and know a God, the human. We definitely have this instinct. A caveman saw lightning strike, needed a way to explain it. Bam. God. They wanted to understand mysticism. They came up with mysticism over, millions of years. So anyway, the God consciousness, the superego is, and I've adapted my own sort of common sense meanings. A lot of these things, I think, Freud, Jung, all of these guys, there's a difference between knowing. There's a huge difference between, I know guys who can run circles around me, and one guy, Nika, he can explain every computer concept, mathematical concept, write it, spout it, talk about it, but as far as like getting into he doesn't even know what he doesn't understand it. There's a huge difference. It's obvious. He can spout it, but he can't walk it, I'd rather walk it, even though I can't spout the figures anymore, and the who was born when, who invented what, how one circuit, I know, I instinctively know that now. Don't have to spout it, but there's a difference between somebody who could shoot a free throw and hit it, hit a free throw with a basketball 100% of the time. There's a huge difference in between that and somebody who can sit there and draw it out and give you mathematical formulas and then claim that they understand the essence of that free throw. Well, they don't. I think it takes both. You need a technical and artistic, if you will, functional view of how a free throw works, for instance. So, but this concept of God, this God consciousness, this superego in Freud's deal, somebody, I can't remember because quite a few people emailed or posted about different things, but somebody said, oh, those guys have been proven wrong, and yada yada, and that's just not correct. Their work is the basis for pretty much everything that goes on in psychiatry and psychology today. I mean, I think, here's the thing, Freud was absolutely correct. Following the genetic and evolutionary pressures, and these are immense pressures, what I'm saying right now is almost assuredly part of my genetic makeup, and my ego is sort of trying to organize it to tell you how this lineage of human beings has come along and happened, or my experience with it, really. Personalize. It's always a mistake to personalize, but we have to be sentient beings. So, but somebody said, oh, these guys are proven. Well, in what universe? That's just incorrect. It's all based on that. Freud was right. I can look back at my life, and I'm just, I talk about my own life. I really like that bird's call. And I can give you almost everything I did, especially in my youth, not so much now, has to do with this evolutionary pressure to mate. Everything that I did in my early life, even music, I wanted to, have social standing, be an impressive guy, and meet girls and mate. I realized later, oh, this was evolutionary pressure working on me. And pretty much, even as force of habit, not now so much, but I find myself constantly trying to do things to have social standing, such as, and we are a social animal. I make vlogs. It allows me to sort of keep out of the day-to-day minutia with other people, and all sort of. Somebody once said, what was it? Somebody once said, by definition, prostitution is a wet and sticky job. So, this allows me, and one thing to making vlogs allows me to be a social. I'm driven by evolutionary pressure to be a social animal. We all are. Remember, you have three needs of man: food, sex, and mysticism. The human animal, as far as its health and happiness, has three considerations: mental health, physical health, and social health. Some people bastardize social health and call it spiritual health. They say God works through, I'll use the term God loosely, as the universe functioning equivalent. They say God works through other people, so in that respect, by being social, we're also spiritual, and that's how God works. So, those damn penguins, But, so you have the animal self, you have your realization that you are a sentient, aware being, and that's so you have the animal self, the id, you have this awareness, the ego, that you're something unique and special, and maybe you are at times. And then you have the superego, the God consciousness, is what we all crave. There's no higher feeling through drugs or anything than when, a musician stands on a stage and has turned in a stunning performance in front of, 10,000 or 100,000 people, drenched in sweat, holding your fist up in the air, like you're being, the person is totally being acknowledged. They're totally receiving support of the community, social support, and everyone in the whole thing is sort of making it the sum total equals more than the separate parts. Something sort of amazing and magical is happening in those situations. So it's why monks chant. It's why religion is there, so that we can have that super ego. Super ego. It's that sense. It's the sense of there's more happening. And Jung had a lot to say about this. I like him a lot better than Freud. The difference, the superego is that sense of there's something more happening here. I am connected to a greater thing. There's magic all around. There is a greater force and a greater purpose at work, And, Jung talked about synchronicity. He believed, basically the difference between for Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, Freud had them. By the way, it's obvious that, both of them did most of their significant work in their early lives and then digressed into complete made-up bullshit. It's getting too damn windy out here. So, Freud got into, it's obvious he was projecting his own sort of psychic garbage. He did a bunch of studies about how everybody who had mental illness was sexually, I hope nobody commented on anything. He did a bunch of this research that he falsified, and Freud was a cocaine addict, so he was just a fucking hedonist. He was just going with his animal instincts and didn't realize his own paradigm of the ego, the superego. He was functioning out of, animal instinct, being a complete hedonist. He did all of these. He was addicted to cocaine. It's obvious he was an addict, and which drugs can be very beneficial. I definitely, in my last one I was talking, I believe that by deranging your senses with drugs for limited times, a day here, once a month, once a year, once a lifetime, it helps you get outside yourself and realize the truth of things. And I know the truth for me. We all have to decide that for ourselves. I'm arrogant and egotistical enough to believe I know the truth for everybody. I don't want anybody else to believe what I believe. I've come to what I've come. For me, somebody else said something about find the truth or something, or you're so close to a truth, and it's like, no, I know the truth for me. I think it applies to everybody, but I'm not audacious enough to try to impose that on you or tell you that. You'll have to find it yourself, and we all do. But for me, I found the truth. But Freud, he was so hung up on sort of kinky, weird sexual and childhood molestation and shit. I'd almost bet you he had some experiences like that. People who constantly project these kind of things over and over. He was obsessed with being right about. He did some falsified research where 100% of the patients he had psychosis and neurosis because they had childhood sexual trauma. Well, some of his contemporaries called him on that and figured out he had falsified his research. It was complete bullshit. He made that up because he wanted to be right. And he himself later said, he was wrong. I don't know if I can't remember if I think he did admit he had falsified. It was obvious. But Carl Jung had a much, sort of the same ideas, but he had a much brighter view of humanity, and he came up with this idea of archetypes. And, the difference between Jung and Freud is that Freud had this sort of dark, nasty, to be just completely graphic, sort of shit, piss, blood, semen-filled view of humanity. Jung didn't see that. He believed that there was more, it was a brighter affair, And I think the thing, and it's obvious when you look at these guys' life's work, that the thing is that both of them let sort of their own idea, their own contamination from the actual experience of life, contaminate their work on talking about the general experience of life. They both brought their own bullshit experiences into their work in later life, and then trying to relate those sort of ugly bullshit experiences as the total overall experience of life, which, they tainted their work with their own experience. It's like being, a flashlight, studying other flashlights and shining shining yourself into a pool of light, adding to the sum without taking into account the fact that you are a flashlight yourself. So yada yada. People and this one I should just put, insert edit here all through it. But so those damn penguins, it's really arrogant of people and mankind to think that we're anything other than a genetic product and an evolutionary product, that our lives have been repeated time and time and time again. We actually have a thing called genetic memories. We wouldn't be alive if we didn't. And, but the ego wants to say that, and it's the ego itself is an evolutionary pressure, so that you will see yourself as unique. That's why they built the pyramids. They thought they were so incredibly unique, and they did a unique work, yada yada. So that you will see yourself as so unique, you should be preserved and passed on through mating. you know, all of this stuff is so obvious. And I will say, with drugs, I talked about it last time, I'm not anti-drug. I think it's really helpful to go on a good long-ass drug bender. Bad advice. But yeah, to derange your senses to find reality. What I think is apt to happen is that most people derange their senses, decide they like it better than reality, and never come back. Most people. Some can. So, but you know, everything is yada yada. The problem, we human beings need to assign God and mysticism. It's an evolutionary, it's a biological, it's a genetic need. Food, sex, and mysticism. So we need to assign myth and legend to all kinds of stuff that doesn't deserve it. And by seeing these things is super meaningful. I mean, when I sort of went over synopsises of Sigmund Freud, I love, or I just love that. But when I went over synopsises of their life, where I didn't go into the bullshit minutia when they both went wrong, and they did. Jung starts talking about every little dream he had, how it's had this epic significance. Dude, you were just tripping. Those were just dreams. Oh, so anyway, the point of all of that is make your own myths, make your own legends, do extraordinary things, you know. Don't pay attention to sort of look at the benchmark and go, yes, people went to the moon, so what? I can do better. On that order, you know. But our egos hamper us and hobble us so much. This need to be so unique and so impressive when we're basically, we're sort of carbon copies of each other. It's this idea that we're unique that drives us on and makes us want to procreate. So, you know, yeah, for me, I've redefined for myself, those are three basic ideas. So the id, the animal self, the ego, the collection of ideas and thoughts that makes you you, and the thing that makes you move forward, and the superego, and there is something more going on overall. We are contributing to, and I didn't even get into Jungian archetypes and all of that. We're contributing slowly and over time genetically to this sort of shared database, both unconscious and sort of conscious. And that itself is a drive. Everything is driven by evolution. If you think those penguins walked that 600 miles back and forth to have an egg, just because, you know, expand that out further and see that, extrapolate, if you will. The last part of Jung's sort of idiom or dictum or paradigm of life is, you know, after, you know, growing up, leaving home, child leaves mom, growing up, leaving home, all these epic, seemingly epic events in a person's life. The last one is preparing for death. And in that phase, you can be, and part of it is isolation, isolating yourself. It's not called isolation, from others, and out of that, there comes a clarity that does not come any other way. Jewel. Hey, Jewel. What are you doing? Oh. Well, it is bright out here.
Huh?
It is bright out here. Let me get your picture again. Man, it is bright out here. It's a nice day, beautiful day. Beautiful out, isn't it?
I've got to get you some more of those things.
Oh, that's all right. I don't need anything.
Why, you don't like them?
Oh, I do. Mountain Dew. There you go. Me and Jewel Alice, people. Hello. Oh.
What are you going to do?
Oh, nothing. I just took our picture together so I can cherish that forever, Jewel. What are you
You're
doing?
not going to sell it?
No. I just took a picture. I take pictures all the time.
Well, I like that. I wished I had it.
What are you doing? Cruising around on that thing?
I want to tell you something.
What's that?
The state, you cannot live by yourself if you're 92 years old. I gotta move.
Where to?
State of Florida, that's the law.
Oh, you'll be fine. I don't think that's a rule or a law.
Have you heard that?
No, I never heard that. I don't think that's a law. I think that's determined by...
I think that's a lot of bullshit.
I think it's determined by independent arbiters.
I'm gonna get you some of those things, honey.
All right, salud. God bless.
All
Be
right.
careful on that device.
All right,
Yep,
baby.
see you, Jill.
All right, honey.
Yep.